Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're looking at someone maybe a little less famous than his students, but absolutely crucial, Musonius Rufus.
That's right. People often hear Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, but Musonius, he's the bridge, really. First century AD, part of the late Stoic.
And the teacher of Epictetus, right?
The actual teacher, yes. And his work, what survives of it, shows this intense focus, almost relentless, on, ethics and living the philosophy daily.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. Pull out those key ideas. How did he frame philosophy as purely practical? A guide for living well. And we really need to dig into his social views, which were, well, pretty radical for Rome, especially about who gets to learn philosophy.
They really were. And, his role often gets missed. He took the Stoic project, which always aimed for that lasting, serene happiness, and just honed it.
Honed it how?
For Musonius, and definitely for Epictetus, who learned from him, philosophy wasn't about, say, complex physics. It was fundamentally a kind of medicine for alleviating the errors and passions that mess us up.
That medical analogy, that's not just fancy talk, is it? It seems central.
Oh, absolutely central. Epictetus, likely echoing Musonius directly, put it bluntly, he said, the philosopher is a doctor, and the philosopher's school is a hospital for souls.
Wow. So if you showed up, you weren't just curious, you thought you needed healing.
Pretty much. You believed your soul was, well, sick, and you were there for the cure.
Okay, if the school's a hospital, what's the illness? What's the diagnosis for the soul?
Well, the Stoics saw it not just as, a bad mood or a mistake. It was deeper. They called it long-standing and hardened vices.
Vices like?
Things like greed, unchecked ambition, constant fear. But the root cause, the thing keeping you sick, was what they called an unrelenting distortion of judgment.
Unrelenting distortion of judgment. That sounds serious. What does that mean exactly? Just making bad calls?
It's more fundamental. It means we consistently get things wrong about what's actually valuable, what truly matters for a good human life. We treat morally neutral things as if they're the ultimate good or evil.
Like money or fame.
Things that are maybe mildly desirable, as they'd say, preferences. But when we chase them desperately, like they're essential for happiness, that distortion causes all the anxiety, the fear, the frustration. The diagnosis is basically you're suffering because you value the wrong things you can't control.
Which brings us right to Musonius's take on what philosophy is actually for. He seems pretty against just intellectual exercise.
Completely against it. If the point is healing, then just being clever with arguments is, well, it's a distraction, isn't it?
Right.
Musonius defined philosophy in this incredibly practical way. Nothing but the practice of noble behavior.
That's it?
Practice. Doing it.
Yes. And he actively discouraged students, men and women, importantly from chasing brilliance in arguments and an excessive cleverness.
So it wasn't anti-intellectual, just anti-showing off. Anti-knowledge that doesn't change you.
Precisely. If it doesn't translate into action, into character, what's the point? The whole goal was developing good character and behaving nobly.
That practical aim always trumped winning a debate or mastering some complex logical puzzle. And this focus on self-improvement, on rigorous self-examination, ties him straight back to Socrates.
Ah, the Socratic connection. Through Epictetus, too, obviously. How did they use that Socratic method, the dialectic, for this soul healing?
Well, the Socratic way, as they used it, wasn't about the teacher proving the student wrong. It was designed to make the student become their own witness.
Their own witness. How does that work?
Through questioning. The philosopher guides you, using your own beliefs, your own concepts, until you see the inconsistency yourself. You realize, oh, wait, that doesn't actually make sense, and you have to give up the faulty belief because your own logic demands it.
So if I think, say, wealth guarantees happiness.
Right. The philosopher wouldn't just lecture you. They'd ask questions. Okay, does wealth always bring security? Do you know any rich people who are miserable? If happiness depends on something that can be taken away, is it really secure happiness? That kind of thing.
So it turns from an argument into a personal discovery.
Exactly. It's internal revelation. Using everyday ideas, desire, freedom, purpose, to expose the flaws in your own assumptions. Epictetus was brilliant at this, using simple, clear logic, not necessarily the dense technical stuff from earlier Stoics, this practical, self-checking logic that's the heart of Musonius's teaching.
That focus on consistency and logic seems like a perfect lead-in to what feels like the most, well, startling part of Musonius's work. His ethics on who actually gets to do this philosophy stuff, found in his diatribes, right?
Yes, diatribes 3 and 4 especially. And you're right, it is startling, particularly when you think about first century Rome hierarchical. deeply patriarchal. Musonius comes along and argues, purely from Stoic principles, that philosophical education must be for everyone.
He kicks it off with such a simple question in Diatribe 3, doesn't he? Basically, why should men get this training more than women?
He does. And then he lays out this logical knockout punch. He says, okay, first premise, we agree virtue is needed for happiness.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Second premise, philosophy is the best way to learn virtue, justice, courage, moderation, all that.
Makes sense.
Then the conclusion is unavoidable. He says, and this is a direct quote basically, by Zeus, if it is appropriate for women to be just, it is necessary for both men and women to have learned these same most supreme and important things.
Wow. So if women need to be good people, just, brave, etc., then they must have access to the tool that teaches goodness, which is philosophy.
It's pure logical necessity. Virtue is the goal. Philosophy is the path. The path can't be closed off based on gender if the goal applies to everyone.
It feels so modern.
It really does.
Yeah.
And he drives it home. Just as no man would be properly educated without philosophy, so no woman would be either. This wasn't just, a progressive opinion. For him, it flowed directly from the core Stoic understanding of nature itself.
Okay, let's unpack that connection. Why did Stoic theory demand this equality? It wasn't just fairness, it was metaphysical.
It was rooted in their definition of being human. The ultimate ethical goal for a Stoic is living in agreement with mature human nature. And how do they define that?
As a rational animal?
Precisely. Rationality is the key feature. It's what sets us apart.
And since both men and women possess reason,
Then both have the same fundamental duty to train that reason to reach its highest potential, which is virtue. To exclude women would imply either they're less rational or that virtue isn't the supreme goal after all. Maybe something like physical strength or having children is more important for them. Musonius flatly rejected that.
he said both sexes are innately equipped by God to perfect themselves.
Yes, by their own efforts. Nature doesn't create a barrier. Society might, but nature doesn't.
It must have been incredibly challenging to teach this in Rome. I mean, women's roles were so defined, education so often just about domestic skills. He was basically saying the whole system was wrong.
He really was, telling the Roman elite that they were neglecting the highest good for half the population. And this consistency, this insistence that philosophy has to be lived and applied universally, that's why his legacy is so powerful. It leads straight into the core practical stuff Epictetus made famous.
Okay, let's shift gears then to that practical legacy. The framework every student must have learned right away, the dichotomy of control.
Ah, yes, the absolute bedrock of practical Stoicism. Epictetus basically told students, keep two mental files. File A, things up to you, within your power, your volition. File B, things not up to you, externals, beyond your direct control.
Sounds simple on paper, but in the middle of, life happening, telling them apart seems like the hardest part. What's actually in file A, the up to me category?
Only what is purely a matter of your will, your opinions, your aims, what you try to achieve, your desires and your aversions, what you seek and what you avoid, and critically, your judgments about things, and your overall attitude. These are the only things you have total control over, the things that shape your character.
And file B, which is pretty much everything else.
Pretty much. Your
Yeah.
body, your health, your property, job, reputation, political freedom, your family, status, even what other people think or do, all external. And the big warning is getting attached to controlling file B stuff. That's the direct path to fear and anxiety. You'll inevitably fail and suffer if your happiness depends on controlling those.
Now, the Stoics call these externals indifferent. But come on, surely being healthy is better than being sick. Rich better than poor. How do they square that circle?
That's a really common confusion, yeah.
Yeah.
They're indifferent in a moral sense. They don't make you a good or bad person. They don't contribute to or take away from your virtue, your core character.
Okay.
But within that category, they absolutely recognize preferences. Health, wealth, those are preferred indifference. It's natural to choose them if you can. Sickness, poverty, dispreferred indifference, you'd naturally avoid them.
But the key is...
The key is that neither status preferred or dispreferred touches your actual goodness. Your character can be excellent, whether you're rich or poor, sick or healthy.
So, back to the judgment piece. An external thing happens. Say, I get fired. The suffering isn't the firing itself, but my judgment about the firing.
Precisely. That's the bridge. Event. Fired.
Yeah.
Judgment. This is a catastrophe. My life is over. Reaction. Panic. Despair. The Stoic insight, echoed by Marcus Aurelius, is It is not the thing itself that troubles you, but your own judgment about it, and this you have the power to eliminate now.
So emotions, like intense fear or anger, the passions as they called them, they aren't automatic. They require a specific kind of flawed judgment.
Exactly. They require the mind to fully assent to agree with, a false belief about value. Like crippling fear requires you to judge something truly terrible is happening and I can't cope, and then believe that judgment is true. That act of assent is what turns a flicker of unease into a destructive passion.
But what about that immediate gut reaction? A loud noise makes me jump, heart pounds, that feels involuntary.
Yes. Seneca called those the first movements. They're natural physiological reactions. Pre-rational, you're not blamed for those. They only become full-blown emotions when your rational mind assents to the value judgment connected to them. If you jump at the noise but immediately assess, okay, just a noise, I'm safe, this is external, the first movement fades. If you assent to, I'm in danger, panic, then it becomes the emotion of fear.
So the training is about catching that moment of assent, strengthening the will to resist bad judgment.
Yes, that's the core of the training. Epictetus laid it out in three main areas, three disciplines focused on perfecting our volition, our will.
Okay, what's the first one?
First and most fundamental, the discipline of desire and aversion. This is about getting your wants and fears aligned with reality. You have to train yourself to only truly desire what's in category A, your own virtuous character and actions, and be averse only to what's in category A, your own vice.
So basically, stop wanting externals and stop fearing externals.
Exactly. Withdraw your emotional investment from category B. If you desire health, which is a preferred indifferent, fine, pursue healthy habits. But you must detach your happiness from the outcome of perfect health, because that outcome isn't fully in your control.
That sounds hard. How do you practice that detachment?
Through conscious effort, sometimes through deliberately choosing simpler circumstances or facing minor hardships to prove to yourself you don't need the external things you crave or fear losing. The goal is internal freedom, where externals can't shake you.
Okay, discipline 1. Desire aversion, focus on category A. What's 2?
Second is the discipline of impulse and action. This is about doing the right thing in the world. It concerns our actions towards others, fulfilling our social roles correctly.
Roles?
Yes, the Stoics use the word prosopon, literally mask or role. We all wear multiple masks: parent, child, citizen, neighbor, employee. This discipline is about acting appropriately, virtuously within those roles, based on reason and our social nature.
So it's about fulfilling your duties.
Precisely. Your impulse to act should be directed towards fulfilling that role well, regardless of how you feel about it. If you're a parent, your actions should be those of a good parent, driven by duty, not just by what feels good or avoids discomfort for you.
Got it. And the third discipline?
The third is the discipline of assent. This is the moment-to-moment guard duty, constantly examining your impressions, your gut reactions, your thoughts, asking, is this true? Is this really good or bad? Is this up to me?
It's like a mental filter.
Exactly. It's the discipline that stops those first movements from getting assent and turning into full-blown destructive emotions. It ensures your beliefs align with reason and nature.
Let's make this concrete with that idea of roles. Epictetus said something like, goodness has priority over every relationship. That sounds a bit cold, almost selfish, prioritizing your own virtue over, say, family.
It sounds harsh, but it's meant to be the opposite of selfish. The idea is that perfecting your own rational character, your virtue, is the only way you can fulfill your duties correctly. Goodness isn't something you find in the relationship. It's something you bring to the relationship.
So being a good person comes first, and then you can be a good father or friend.
Exactly. If your own judgment is distorted, violating discipline 3, or your desires are misplaced, violating discipline 1, you can't act correctly in your roles, violating discipline 2. Your flawed character will poison your actions.
Okay, the anecdote about the magistrate and his sick daughter, that illustrates this breakdown perfectly, right?
Oh, it's a classic Epictetus story. A father, also a magistrate, comes to him. His daughter is critically ill. He loves her dearly, he says, but he fled her bedside because he couldn't stand watching her suffer.
He ran away out of love.
That's how he saw it. But Epictetus just tore into him. He saw it as a total failure of philosophy.
Why? What was the error?
He failed on multiple counts. First, discipline of aversion. He was overwhelmed by his own feelings, his grief, his fear of suffering. He prioritized avoiding his own discomfort and internal stink he should manage over his duty. That's misuse of judgment, focusing on his feelings instead of his actions.
Okay.
Second, he failed the discipline of impulse action. He completely abandoned his prosopon, his role as a father. A father's duty in that situation is to be present, provide comfort, manage the situation rationally, regardless of the outcome for the daughter, which is external, category B.
So he focused on controlling his feelings, which he should manage internally, and abandoned his actions, which he absolutely should control.
Precisely. His judgment was totally skewed. Comfort over duty. The daughter's illness was the external circumstance. His response was the thing within his control, and it should have been guided by reason and his role, not by his aversion to unpleasant feelings.
It really shows these weren't just abstract ideas. And the world Musonius and Epictetus lived in, it wasn't exactly peaceful. Politics often clashed hard with philosophy. How did this training hold up under real pressure, like exile?
Yeah, the late Stoa coincided with some pretty rough Roman emperors, like Nero, like Domitian. And emperors often saw philosophers, especially Stoics, as a threat.
Why a threat?
Because Stoicism teaches self-sufficiency, inner freedom, living by principle, not by fear or favor. That kind of thinking is naturally resistant to tyranny, isn't it? So yeah, practicing philosophy could literally get you killed or banished.
And Musonius himself was exiled. Twice, wasn't it?
Yes, first under Nero, sent off to Gyros, apparently a really barren island, and later his own student Epictetus was kicked out of Rome by Domitian along with all the other philosophers.
Wow.
And it wasn't just exile. Think of someone like Helvidius Priscus, another Stoic influence figure, stood up to Emperor Vespasian defending the Senate's traditional rights. Vespasian eventually had him executed, so the stakes were incredibly high.
So how did this philosophy, this practical training, prepare them for that level of adversity? Persecution, exile, facing death?
They essentially reframed adversity. They saw it as, well, an advanced training exercise. Unpleasant, sure, but valuable. The goal was always to internalize that core truth. Virtue is the only true good, vice the only true evil. Everything else is indifferent.
Seneca talked about this too, right? He was exiled as well.
He did. He argued that nobody wants hardship, obviously, but you absolutely need the skills to cope with it because it will come. And he said hardship falls hardest on those who don't expect it.
So preparation is key, that idea of premeditatio malorum, thinking about bad things in advance.
Exactly. You mentally rehearse potential misfortunes, losing your job, getting sick, being exiled, even death, not to be morbid, but to strip them of their shock value. If you've already accepted, intellectually and emotionally, that these things can happen and that they are external, indifferent to your character, then when they do happen, well, you're prepared. You've already categorized them correctly.
And Seneca, in his exile on Corsica, seemed to almost embrace the hardship.
He really leaned into it. He wrote about the value of simplicity, almost like a cynic, praising poverty, living as an unaccommodated man. He used his exile as a real-world laboratory to prove the Stoic point. Externals like wealth, status, comfort, truly indifferent. His inner state, his virtue, remained untouched. The philosophy worked.
Which brings us to the ultimate external, the one indifferent we all face, death.
Right. And the practical philosophy had very direct ways of dealing with mortality. Epictetus, again, was brutally logical. He'd say life itself is just borrowed from nature. It's a loan that could be recalled at any time.
He said it's foolish to want your loved ones to be immortal.
Yes. You are a fool to want your children, wife, or friends to be immortal. It calls for powers beyond you. It's wanting control over category B.
We're just temporary custodians, then, of our bodies, our roles, our lives.
Pretty much. Everything external is temporary, on loan. And the fear of death. Epictetus insisted that the belief that death is terrible is merely the product of our judgment about it.
Not death itself, but our idea about death.
Exactly. And they always pointed back to Socrates. He faced his execution with total calm, didn't he? That was their proof. If you've perfected your character, death holds no terror. It's just another external event, a change in form.
So by mastering judgment, especially about these huge externals like exile and death, they aim for complete psychological freedom.
That was the ultimate prize. Whether you were Epictetus, the former slave, Musonius, the exiled teacher, or Marcus Aurelius, the emperor. Serenity, freedom from disturbance, ataraxia. Because your well-being depended only on what was truly yours. Your character, your judgments, your responses. Category A.
This has been a fantastic deep dive. It really brings Musonius Rufus out of the shadows. Shows his influence wasn't just in abstract ideas, but in founding this incredibly robust, practical, lived tradition that Epictetus carried forward.
Absolutely. I think the core lesson from Musonius, and through him, Epictetus and the others, is just that. The real power of philosophy isn't being clever. It's the consistent, daily grind of applying virtue-noble behavior by mastering your judgments and assent.
So for anyone listening, the crucial takeaway seems to be constantly sorting out, constantly working on what's genuinely up to your character, your attitude, your responses, that's the real work.
That's the lifelong practice. And, circling back to Musonius' really radical claim that this practice, developing good character, was vital for both men and women.
Right.
It underlines that the highest human purpose, virtue, is universally accessible through this philosophical training.
Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. If Musonius argued 2,000 years ago that learning to perfect one's character, mastering the most supreme and important things, was essential for everyone, where in our modern lives, in our education or social expectations, might we still be wrongly limiting who gets access to that kind of deep character-focused training? Who do we assume doesn't need to learn how to achieve psychological freedom? It's a question Musonius posed, and maybe we're still figuring out the answer.